Good evening and welcome everyone to our Tuesday night talk. My name is Elizabeth Padilla and I'm your host this evening. And here we have Sister Denise Lawrence with us for this wonderful series called Embracing 2022. And so tonight we will look at embracing love. Sister Denise.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And first of all, I would like to mention that love is described and defined in many different ways by different people. So, as in many situations, we have to identify and clarify what exactly is meant by love. And I would like to take up the aspect of love as generosity of spirit. And what does that mean, generosity of spirit? It means that you, whatever it is that you do, is for the benefit of other people. And when you're doing something for the benefit of other people, sometimes people talk about this as altruism. And in fact, altruism could not be really a possibility because of certain understanding that we have in the study and practice of Raj Yoga in connection with karma philosophy. So all these things are absolutely connected. And so we need to realize that if you do something because of love, if you do something which is beneficial to someone else because you feel good, you feel you want to make sure that they have what they need, whether you want a return or not, you will get a return. And in that respect, we take a look at the difference between human love, our love, and divine love, or the love of God. And what is the difference between human love and divine love? Very interesting. God, or the higher power, the supreme being, does not get any return for any beneficial action or any love. And so this is truly altruistic love. So that puts us in a little bit of a dilemma, but it's an interesting one. You do something out of love. Love, what kind of love? Probably the highest kind of love is love for God and love for the world, or love for humanity. And just take yourself to your heart for a moment and think about how you feel about the world and how you feel about the divine, because how you feel about these will let you know what you're motivated by. And then the opposite of that, which you can also think about, because we can understand things fairly well by looking at the contrast. So the contrast is, do you do things because you want to get something out of it? So one thing is, you do something, you will always get the return of it because that's the nature of the philosophy of karma. But then your motivation. If you're doing something because you want to get something out of it, you're looking for the immediate profit. What do people want? I mean, people who are charitable, generous, they want recognition. They want gratitude. And then if they don't get it, then quite easily they can come into a negative feeling that, oh, I did so much and they were ungrateful and they didn't appreciate and things like that. So that would be called very limited love, very selfish love. And most people think of that as love, actually. But here, I think embracing love, for me, it's embracing a much higher type of definition of love. And this is, I think, also very connected with the idea of why does a person do spiritual practice? Because for me, when I do spiritual practice, what it means is I connect myself in my consciousness of the self as a soul, and I connect with the supreme, the divine, the source, which includes the source of love. And meditation means to draw that strength into the self and to be like a receiver and a transmitter. So you receive, you feel, you transmit. So you're not actually empty. I think that people who do something out of love when they're empty, they do it because they're using it to fill themselves. And it does fill you a bit, but probably not enough. Because when the soul is really depleted, really empty, just doing good things for everyone doesn't really fill that hole in the soul. And this is why we do meditation, because meditation means you connect with the source, the ocean. The ocean is big. You connect with the ocean of love, and you just keep on drawing that love into yourself and letting it fill you and overflow and pass through. You're not operating as a depleted person or as an empty person. And that means that you can love in such a way that you can hold high ideals, but you can also back it up. And if you're not appreciated, it doesn't cause a negative emotion. Because why are you doing it? It's really important to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And if the answer is something like, I'm doing it because it needs to be done, just that. I'm doing it because it makes sense to do it. I'm doing it because that's who I am, and not because of what I get out of it. Then I would call this that kind of love or generosity of spirit, because you really cannot be generous unless you have stuff. You can be generous with your money when you have money, but even people who have a lot of these things, sometimes because the spirit is empty, it stops them being generous with even what they have. And so this is, I think, really the biggest problem, this depletion of the soul, depletion of the spirit. And it's so subtle that people don't really realize it. That it's so difficult to quantify. How full am I, or how empty am I? And if you can get to quantify it, I think it allows you to be clearer about your motivations. And when you are meditating, which is why meditation is so good for us, is because you're not doing anything in your interaction with the world for the purpose of filling yourself. Your interaction with the world is for the purpose of cultivating good relationships, which means like it's a balanced give and take, but your give and take is not dependent on getting something out of it. Something like that.
How does one learn to love themselves?
It's deep. In our interaction with God, the first thing to think about is, with what eyes does God look at me? You see, among people who are based in religious belief. Mostly people put themselves quite low and they put God quite high. And so it's quite an unequal relationship.
Mhm.
And God says, "You are my child." And God is called the Father of all souls. That means God will look at you as his child, not as someone very low. A child is the one who you're preparing for life. A child is the one that you love because this is your child. And whatever are your capacities, your treasures, your powers, you want to fill that into your child because of that relationship, you see.
Mhm.
So what is interesting about this series called Embracing, so we need to be able to see ourselves as God sees us. And maybe there's a guilty conscience or whatever. There's all sorts of reasons why a person feels. I think it's to do with culture also. You believe I am very low and God is very high, and God will, find out all my faults and not like me. And there is this worry that maybe God will not like me. And I think that's part of the religious teachings, that you have to confess your sins and you have to be humble and all these things. But he says, that there's an interesting expression in Christianity where there's a story about Jesus was talking to a group of people and some children were there, and the elders wanted to make the children go away. And his statement was, "Suffer the little children to come to me." And suffer means allow. And I think also it's important for a person to just allow themselves to be seen as worthy, and not to block God's love. Because when you think of yourself as low, you block it. And when you think of yourself as, yeah, I'm worthy, I'm the child of God, God loves me, including all my deficiencies and defects and whatever. But the love of God is that God takes me, teaches me, guides me, fills me with all the treasures and the wisdom, and makes me the new creation, you see. And so we have to embrace that and not block it. And then the channel of communication between the soul and God is open, and the love is flowing between I and God, God and me, and there's nothing to stop it. And I think that a lot of the beliefs have created a situation where the soul will just block it, and we don't have to block it.
I can actually feel it from you as you are describing it. I'm trying to think of what the steps might be, Sister Denise, to begin that relationship, that journey to love the self, so that I am not shy to accept the love that God cannot wait to love his children.
I think what's blocking it is our ego. This conviction that I'm not worthy is a barrier, and this is ego. Because if the barrier is placed, then you don't have to feel yourself. When you drop the ego, you feel your pain. And the ego mask is something to anesthetize the pain in your heart of I don't know who I am, I don't know what I am, and I feel that I can't go to God because he might not like me. You see what I mean? There's this
Right.
thing. there are some beliefs in India about God, and one of them is that, because people are afraid of God because of the authority, the perfection, all this, the supreme justice and all that. So people try to protect themselves from that with this ego mask. And when God comes in very, very friendly form, like a mother, if you can imagine a mother has a child who has maybe handicapped. And when there's a handicap, the person feels ashamed that they're not worthy of love, right? But the mother will love that child regardless, because this is my child. I'm not here to judge the child, you see. And so this very loving, friendly, motherly, gentle form of God, to allow that to come to you is very good, because in front of that gentle sweetness, you can actually have enough courage to drop that barrier and allow it to come in.
If in order to be accepted, I understand that one would have to accept themselves, to feel worthy of love and belonging.
There are so many, you see, layers of maybe messages that one has received, or just a sense of inadequacy. Sometimes people feel they're not good enough, or they may have heard it a lot. They may have been treated as a second-class citizen. All of these little things that are the ways that people get treated by other people make them close down, you see. And that also they close down from themselves, they close down from God, they close down from society. And this creates a very deep wound in the soul, a very deep sorrow. And I think the love of God is to heal that. And when you go to a healer, one of the things you have to do is open up and tell what the symptoms are, what the problem is, so that the healer can go in there and touch the wounded place and heal it. And it is the case that healing is a sign of love, So to heal a soul is God's love. And to heal a soul from the wounds of so many things in this life, but maybe other lives too. So many things have happened. I was looking at the history of India for the past 1,000 years, and looking at some of the incredible wounds that happened to that civilization. And you look at different other civilizations. Today I went to visit the buffaloes in the Golden Gate Park, and I remember that there were herds that were said to be like 12, 15 miles wide and long, and these were just 8 or 10 little buffaloes left over from this mighty presence in the land of America, which was killed off because people didn't love the earth, And, a lot of people subscribe to materialism, taking advantage, benefiting the self, and so on. But the price you pay for taking without realizing how selfish it is that you lose value for yourself, and people don't even realize what has happened, like historically, and how this is all compounded this empty feeling inside.
So now, how does one begin that journey to repair, or to develop love for the world and for others?
I think once you taste the love of God, it changes things. And just one moment of genuinely, authentically approaching God and saying, here I am, as is, come to me and heal me and rebuild me, because I know that I have collapsed, basically. And all of my masks, these ego masks, are hollow. They're only masks. They're not real, you see. And once a person realizes this, it's easier to drop them. When you take them for the reality and you're fused with them, you can't let go because it is you. But once you see that it's not real and you just make one little contact with the real self, even if it's, broken and weak, but you just turn genuinely to God and feel that response that He gives to the person who's true, the person who's real. He cannot respond until we're true and real. And then when you've tasted it and you've realized that that's all you have to do is just be you, and don't have to pretend anything, don't have to prove or disprove anything. You just like naked but fearless. And then once you've established that communication, that give and take, then the next thing is to be very aware, what do I do that sustains it and what do I do that blocks it? So that we avoid doing the things that take us back to where we were. And because that's very easy, you revert back to your ego masks naturally. That's no. But God is very aware about human psychology, very aware about human predicament, and says, I know who you are. I understand what's happening with you. And I'm here to carry you to your true self. And that's why I'm here. And I'm here for you. And then you just go with that, put your hand in His hand and go.
I imagine, just lifting my awareness to the level of that divine presence of God. And even the way you were explaining it, I imagined right away that how natural it would be to be an instrument of that love, to give that love, and people will know who you hang around with.
And I think also when you have that connection, there's a vibration that radiates from you. And people pick it up and they trust you because they feel that you're real. And so they can become open, and then that energy can reach them. You don't really have to do very much. It's more like you have to be.
And it sounds so simple, but it's scary for people. Sometimes it's even scary for me.
Once you've dropped the pretense, and it comes off in bits, right? Like armor. Okay. And you've seen how the medieval armor is. You have the things on your arms and your shoulders and your legs and everything. So you have to take off each bit and just know that you are just you. When you are very sure that you are valuable and you are clean and you are pure, and this you check your motivations. Why are you doing what you're doing? And you also check, what happens in life is there's when reward you, you go up. When they discard you or discredit you or deny you, you go down. And so this is our susceptibility to public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very limiting factor. But when you are only yourself, and you know what you are and who you are, and you know how God is looking at you,
Mm-hmm.
and you can say to public opinion, you don't know me. You just don't know me. So what you think about me doesn't make any difference to the price of rice in China. I mean, it's not of any consequence.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to separate yourself from public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're free.
To take off that armor, there has to be courage and strength.
What's in the way is you have to actually surrender. Because as long as it's on your terms,
Mm-hmm.
you keep your armor. But when you surrender to God in your way, it all comes tumbling down. And there you are in your shining glory without your rusty armor.
Whenever I've had these really powerful experiences, I feel invincible. But of course, then we have our karmic accounts. And so how to sustain through those?
Well, your karmic accounts with people is this, like what I'm calling it, public opinion. They control you by saying, I love you or I hate you. You have to make your support God rather than public opinion. It's really either or. And the greatest limitation is public opinion. And it's also the least reliable thing, because what does anybody know? They can't see you. God knows you inside and out. God knows you far better than you know you. And if he says, no, you're mine, you're my child, you're my student, you're my heir, I'm interested in you, what do these other people know? They don't know anything. All they can see is your skin.
How can I develop that recognition of me as not just the skin? And even though I know better, and I'll find myself falling into that trap.
I think you have to go through many trials, because the trials, the difficulties, the rejections, the pain, all of that, you survive it and you get through it because you're holding your hand in God's hand and you're gradually letting go of these other unreliable hands. And you're getting strong enough to say, have a nice day, to the people who want to control you by manipulation, putting you up or putting you down. And this is the key, I think, of God's teachings. Be neutral in the face of positive and negative.
And to keep me balanced in that game, I can see how just taking those baby steps every day, so it's not like this feeling of an overwhelming effort.
I think also it has to be unconditional surrender. That means with or without an experience, or with or without success. Unconditional surrender is quite an interesting idea.
Oh dear, okay. It's this game of remembering and forgetting. And so we're so thirsty for love.
Well, I think also to tell yourself it's optional. You can love yourself or not. But to love yourself, you have to honor who you are. And he tells you, look, you are eternal, you're indestructible, you lost power, that's all.
Mhm.
Actor, you played many parts, you lost power. I'm here to restore you to power, and I'm here to give you many powers so that you wrestle with all these things that you just mentioned and become the victorious soul. And you can't be victorious without a war. You can't be a warrior with no scars.
Mhm.
You may lose a few battles, but you're not planning on losing the war. So the spiritual warrior aspect is there.
Or what is the conquest for this spiritual war?
The conquest is the idea that you're not okay.
Mhm. And to
You
know
have
truth, to know.
truth. Truth is you're fine.
Mhm.
Truth is drop your armor. And truth, I think, also needs this courage, the courage to drop everything, this unconditional surrender. You wouldn't unconditional surrender to anyone else, but unconditional surrender to God means stripping yourself of all the elements that you put together to protect yourself and which took the form of this rusty armor. And you fly free. A soul means free and invincible, and you're laughing.
You know, when you have a child, or let's say a puppy, a kitten, or a child, an embodiment of innocence, and you'd think to yourself, who would not surrender themselves to such innocence?
We have to be wise,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to understand the reality of the surrounding so that you are not totally open. Because if you're totally open, then all kinds of junk can come and invade you.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And the reason why I was sort of zoning in on this little analogy of the puppy and the kitten and the child was to sort of recognize that innocence in God. Is God any less? You know?
Well, you have to trust God. I was remembering in the latest stories that have been coming in the news how children have been killed by predatory men lately, and very young children, 4 years old, 3 years old, just used and abused by predators, kidnapped, stolen, taken, destroyed. And the world is dangerous. And so you have to have an armor and personal power to be able to recognize what is positive and what you have to protect yourself from. And also understand that when you're protecting yourself with your rusty armor, it's not very effective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we heard in our studies that there are two kinds of weapons. One kind of weapon is, bombs and all of these things. And then there's another kind of weapon, which is called yoga power. And yoga power is the same thing as your channel of the energy of love coming from God and filling you with light and power is a gigantic weapon, but it doesn't require any kind of anger or violence or anything like that. You just have to be in your power and not afraid to be in your power. The problem is people have a desire for protection.
Mm-hmm.
Power, position, money, property, protection. And this desire for protection is a statement that you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
And a desire for protection where you will look to an insurance company, a strong-looking man or woman, a father figure, a hero figure, or whatever, and you're not making God that. You're making some human or some institution or some position or some building your protection, and it will fail you.
Mm-hmm. And why is that? How would it fail me?
Well, it can collapse any time. It can be taken away any time, and then you're naked.
Mm-hmm.
But if you realize that that is like fake, then you're not going to look to it for your support. You're going to take support from the intangible, the invisible, and not from these which appear to be giving you protection, but they are deceptive. They're deceiving you. It's not real.
That I have to learn how to be real in order to detect what is real. I have to be real.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Is there any easy way to do this?
Well, I think it's step by step, step by step. We have our study, we have the context of the game all the time happening, all the time. And moment by moment, there are tests and messages and analogies and opportunities and so on. And what we have to do is use everything to see clearly. And gradually this sort of shadow over our divine eye gets removed. And when you see clearly, then you can act accordingly.
Oh, yes. And so what I'm hearing as you are speaking and sharing is that by focusing on that authenticity and that skill set of being honest with myself, being true to myself, then I will be in that resonance, won't I? To have a more consistency with God so that I can ahead of time pick up if there's danger, if there's that's my armor, actually, that farsightedness.
There's a story, or not a story, but an analogy about the lobster. And when a lobster gets born, they're very small, like a shrimp, all right? And then they have to drop their skin because it's an exoskeleton. Their skeleton is on the outside. So they grow and they're too tight for that skeleton. So they have to drop it, and then they have no protection. And they're very vulnerable. So predators can take them. And they have to do this 8 times before they become adult.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's an interesting analogy because, the individual who's learning spiritual practice and developing these things, you can't really become really protected until you drop this exoskeleton, and you have to go through this period of great vulnerability as you grow into the next size of shell, and all the way till you become a very big lobster.
Yeah. I would like to maybe take a look at the crisis that's happening within the family unit, within the world. Families breaking down, mistrust, even children, and so on, not getting that sustenance and love in the world. Would you have any insights on that? With the heartache that might be happening in the world, how do I believe that there is this powerful love that can turn things around?
It's very difficult because people are not, the people are empty and they do not have the power to give love to each other. So they keep depleting each other. And there's also a lot of karmic bondages. This is a time of karmic settlement. So there's a lot of real heavy tribulation going on because of these things, but people don't really know about this part. And it's difficult to find an educational environment where people can learn how to be a wife, a husband, a child, an aunt, a friend, because our education system teaches us how to just grab what we can for the self, and that everything is just about materialism. And one of the big problems is the different kinds of prejudice, race prejudice, gender bias, and all of this, and the cruelty that goes on because people are preying on each other, is taking the world to a point where if it becomes like really, really bad, the last option is you turn to God. But if we could shore ourselves up and fill ourselves up before it gets that bad, that would be good.
Mm-hmm.
But for many people, they just don't until it gets to be the worst of the worst.
How would one begin those steps to believe in love?
I think you have to be an example of it in front of her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because when something that is filled with very powerful love is standing in front of you, it's a bit undeniable,
Yes. I guess I was hoping like what words of wisdom I could share with her because she's so smart. But
I think that giving people these very good pieces of advice hasn't really done the job. But being something, people trust what's tangible. They don't really want to hear what we should or shouldn't do because they've heard it from so many,
mm-hmm.
and they kind of just tune it out, But if we can be something so stable, so steady, that people say, I want what you've got.
Mm-hmm. And they know what it is, don't they? They'll know what true love when they sense it, don't they?
It's a very powerful energy, and it's the thing that people are missing. And so when you see what you're missing, you want to grasp it and take it into yourself because it's a really deep missing piece.
Where can we begin to feel that contentment? How does one begin that journey?
For myself, I use the word fulfillment
mm-hmm.
rather than contentment.
Mm-hmm.
Does it for me better. And I get it from the study that we do and applying it as like a filter. You see everything that's going on in the light of this understanding, and then also you're keeping yourself in communication with the divine who sees things from a different angle than we do.
Mm-hmm.
So, the message is, this is a game. You must understand the game.
What are we missing here? After all these decades of spiritual practice, and we're getting this basic class on fulfillment. And it was like the remedy and solution to all problems.
Because when you're empty, you are oriented towards trying to fill yourself with something that won't fill you. It's a bit like an addiction, which is also an allergy. You see, you're addicted to the thing that damages you, the thing that you're allergic to. So stop trying to fill yourself with that, because it's totally counterproductive. And fulfillment is also that you understand where the fullness comes from.
Not the superficial, not the, like you said, position, my
power, position, property, protection.
Yes.
They're promises, and the promises are deceptive.
We spoke about the masks that come on, that keep God's love out of us, basically, and we do not experience it. These masks, I think they are the result of various experiences we had when we had no masks. So they materialized and we keep hiding behind them. So how do we safely undo them and basically let God's love in, but not other stuff come in, as Sister Denise was saying? How do we do that?
I think this is where this step of courage comes in. And it's a little bit like my analogy of the lobster. I mean, he gets too fat to fit inside his shell. So the shell has to pop and fall off. But it's so dangerous because he has no protection. And if you say, okay, I'll be willing to drop all my masks, all my protection, all my armor, because I have God. And that's a big step of courage, because you're taking a risk. And I think it's very interesting to think about risk-taking, because if you never take a risk, you never get, you know. I think it's connected with that.
Clearing out triggers that bring up the broken heart syndrome. She's calling it the broken heart syndrome, which can come from anywhere. And it means having to have a deep acceptance of the self and all the mistakes that have been made. So I am thinking that seeding very powerful thoughts that make me feel worthy no matter what, so I can feel that I belong to God. But sometimes, not always, I find it harder to feel that God belongs to me.
Let me remind everyone of the theme of the Murli that we heard this morning in our time zone at 5 o'clock in the morning. And the theme was Manjit, conquer the mind. Because how does the mind work? We have to understand how the mind works. You get a trigger, right? Something you hear, something that triggers means the mind operates by association. So you hear something, it associates immediately to some wound, and it triggers the emotion that is connected with that. And that is all in the mind, and it's an option. If something is triggered, you can untrigger it. And this untriggering is the same thing as being a conqueror of the mind, or manjit. You need to understand that, okay, you heard something, read something, or something triggered your associations. And they triggered your associations because you haven't neutralized them. You know, there is this expression that comes in our study about, if you remember God, your sins will be absolved. And I'm always telling everybody there's nothing like absolution. Doesn't happen, never did, never will. Get rid of that word. It's misleading. And in its place, I use the word neutralize. Mm-hmm. And it is because a sin means something that you have done or that was done to you that caused you to take sorrow. And when the memory of that is triggered, you go through that whole thing again. And it consolidates the power of that sin over you. And when you have remembrance of God, it also means you have remembrance of what he gives you, which is the treasure, the knowledge. That's your inheritance, the knowledge. And the knowledge is around all these bad things. You have to say, so what? Whether somebody did something bad to you or you did something bad to somebody, to neutralize it, you have to say, okay, so what? It is what it is. It happened. I'm not going to do it again.
So even our own mistakes, are you saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then the energy of that negative karma is neutralized. And that is how you get free from sin. But you can't approach sin in a religious manner. You'll never become free. But if you approach it in this sort of way, this is what he's teaching us. But sometimes people just don't get it.
Thank you. Lovely. Also, a lovely comment: to find a purpose is part of this journey. Mm-hmm. You find that helpful too? A purpose outside of our own needs.
Well, I think I remember Daddy Janki talking to us about purpose. And she would say in English, what is my purpose? You know, and it's a very important question to ask yourself, what is the purpose of me? What is the purpose of my life? You know, and it is very simply to be a kind of full moon, which reflects the light of the sun of knowledge. That's your purpose. You don't have to do anything but be something that reflects something invisible. You can make it visible. There's a good purpose.
It's lovely. There's a question here. If someone has experienced mistrust and or failed, like divorce or abuse in relationships multiple times, how does one function with people or relationships until one becomes powerful and to take power from God? So
I think the problem of these kinds of relationships is that you get into a relationship with some assumptions, and the assumptions that it's supposed to be this way and not that way. The person is supposed to do this and not that. I remember one time somebody said to me, I promise to make you happy. And I said, are you some kind of idiot or what? You don't have to make me happy. And you can't make me happy. That's not the deal. Mm-hmm. But people have this romantic idea, which is completely misleading. Relationship is mutually beneficial interaction. But you never give yourself to somebody. This is the problem of our society. It gives you a set of instructions that are totally counterproductive. You do not look for your other half. You're already entire, and you have to have your barriers and boundaries, because if you drop those and assume that that's the way to do things, it just messes things up completely. It's all the time negotiation, and gradually you build trust. But the way the world tells you about relationships is very incorrect. And so we have to learn it all over again. And the key that we learn in Raj Yoga is have all relationships with God. That means all the things that are going to sustain you come from that divine source, and begin your relationship with other people in a fraternal manner, and then develop the role. That is better.
And I couldn't help but think that, of course, your relationship with God would also help in that.
Well, you know what's interesting is God is about the only being anywhere who's not dysfunctional. And so if you have a relationship with someone who's dysfunctional, it will always be problematic. But if you have a relationship, though you may be dysfunctional, you have a relationship with someone who's functional, you will learn how to relate. And then you can apply that in your human relationships.
Yeah. How can we help adults who lean on us to make decisions?
One thing that's needed is if you love someone and support them and teach them to lean on you, that's not a good idea. You need to be supportive without being someone's support, and you need to be there, but do not make them dependent on you. That's not very smart, because you will feel crushed by that burden. You know, if somebody's leaning on you and you move away, they're going to fall down. So they should learn not to lean on you. You have to negotiate. This is what I will do. This is what I won't do. The society, especially those cultures which talk about the need to support the elderly parents, you have to be realistic, and the culture will make you think that something unreasonable and unrealistic is your duty, and then they want you to be crushed by it. And that's just a reality of the present time. So you need to really rethink it and make it very clear to yourself and negotiate. This is what you can do. This is what's possible. And then what you can't do. Sometimes there are more than one sibling. Sometimes there are social services which need to be part of the sustaining system. And you just have to really think clearly about what you can do, what you will do, what you can't do, because the pressure that is put on people by the definition that they give to, you have to take care of the elderly to a point where it crushes you, and then you can't take care of them anyway. So this is why you have to really rethink it and look at it as a role in a movie. And then you have to consult with your heart and your soul and what you know about spirituality, so that you can create a contract, work it out with that person. And then the comments of the public opinion, which I think I mentioned before, is very unreliable and very harsh, usually very judgmental and holier than thou and all of this sort of thing. You need to really feed yourself with spiritual power to be able to manage the pressures of life as we know it. The priority is, number one is yourself, and number two is God, and number three is everybody else. And if you don't have that priority, you will not be able to fulfill what you understand is what you have to do.
When do you apply fake it till you make it? Because we were talking about being true and real and getting rid of the masks. And so they're questioning this saying.
I don't really go for that one. Fake it till you make it. It's, quite a fashionable statement. And sometimes you have to really practice to do something, practice to do it in the right way, even if all the rest of you doesn't want to do it like that because it doesn't seem real. But still you have to do things in the right way, and gradually you have faith in it. I think more like that is maybe better, because otherwise you will always just be fake.
So thank you, everyone. And so now let's settle in to a guided commentary by Sister Denise.
So this is love, the spirit filled with the peace of God and the love. Your soul is made of 5 strands of light. Purity is one, peace, love, power, and bliss. And with these 5 strands of light, create a beautiful garland around your neck. Decorate yourself with these 5 beautiful feelings. This is what you are. And when your strength ebbs away, you know what to do. Turn within and just reach into that ocean of light. And in that light, discern the love, the power that restores you to your fullness. Do not put up a barrier, but drop the ego. Open the heart and allow that fountain of love to pour into your being. A fountain of light. To flow to all those empty spaces, the dark shadows. Just fill yourself with that light and love. And let yourself be what you really, truly are. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. So thank you, Sister Denise, for these lovely insights to embrace love. And not only just for 2022, but for eternity.